So it's hour 2 of lesson 8, and we're going to keep working with our music store. So we've sort of finished. We've finished Google and Facebook login. We want to start building shopping cart functionality, which I'm hoping this week and next we can actually finish. So right now, what we want to do is when a user goes to our store, so we built these pages quite a while ago. We should probably have a look at them. So we pulled up, on this page, we selected our list of genres. We made each one a link. So when we pick on one genre, we get a list of all the albums. So what we want here is we want to add an add to cart link here beside each album. The user can add one album at a time to their shopping cart. What do you suppose should happen next? What typically happens after when you're shopping online, after you click add to cart, where should we take the user? What should they see? Daniel? Yeah, we probably want to create a shopping cart page that shows them the current contents of their cart. So all the items they've put in the cart, the ability to remove an item, as well as the total, right? This is how much it's going to cost me. Now, we do actually have, if we look in our database, when I gave you the music store database script back late September, right? We've really only been working with 3 tables. We've been working with album, artist, and genre, but there were 3 other tables here that we haven't worked with. We have an order table, which we won't work with today. So information about our customer and kind of billing and shipping information. We've got an order details table. So this would be each unique album they purchased, how many they purchased, and the price. But then we also have a cart table. So the cart table keeps track as someone shopping what items they're putting in their cart. Now, we could do this in memory. Some shopping cart systems, they don't actually store the shopping cart in the database. They just store it in the user session. But there's some good reasons to actually store the items in the database as soon as a user puts it in their cart, even if they never buy it. What would be some of the reasons that we might actually want to store what they're putting in their cart, Ryan? Okay, that's one. So the cart is persistent, right? Maybe I want to shop, but I don't want to buy it yet because I'm not sure, or I want to wait till my payday. Josh?
Something that actually happened to me was one time I was going to buy movie tickets online for Cineplex, but it was like on a Tuesday, and when I went back there and like a month later or something, on Saturday, I still got the Tuesday price. I think it must have stored it within.
Cool. That's neat. Okay. Any other reason? Can you think of any other reasons why it might be useful to keep track of what people are putting in their cart, even if they never check out? Right. Okay. So as the business owner, that's useful intelligence, right? What are people buying? Most shopping cart software comes with is a report called an abandoned cart report. What do you suppose that is? Letitia, you're nodding. What do you think it might be?
Put it in the cart because you didn't buy it, but you can use the information for marketing.
Absolutely, right? So if we know what people are putting in their cart but not buying, then maybe we can think about, okay, well, this product is interesting to people, but for some reason not interesting enough for them to actually buy. So do we need to put it on sale? Do we need a promotion? What do we do? That's a really useful piece of information for someone who owns an online store to have. Ryan?
Or something, or remind me that I have stuff in the cart.
Sure.
Stuff like that.
Right. So if we look at what's here, we've got an album ID. So obviously every album they put in their cart, how many they bought, and a date stamp. We also have this cart ID. So if we look at one of my other music store databases, we can actually look at what's in the table. We've got the album ID, the count, the date created. Now notice this cart ID. What do you notice about it if you look in the values? of the cart ID. We have a few different types of values here. What do you suppose each one would represent? Yeah, Daniel, you mentioned it. Right. So here, right, it's pretty clear I've got my username with my email. What about all these other ones that just seem to have kind of like this long hash? Sorry? Good guess. Well, what are the two possibilities? What we might have two kinds of users shopping. What are the two types of users we might have if you look at these values? In this case, do we know who the user is? Yeah, so the user's logged into the site. So if the user's logged into the site, as they put items in the cart, we're going to use their username to keep track of what is that person buying. So this is where the persistence comes, right? So if they leave the site and come back next week or use a different device, we can show them all the items will still be in the cart. And we can simulate this. We can log in one browser and then go to another browser, log in with the same account. And if we go to the cart, we should see the same items, even on a different device. So all of these people, why would we have these kind of long hash strings instead? Raj?
These are anonymous users, I would say, and when they come back from same device, we can show them.
Right, so this would be if they're shopping anonymously. We don't know who they are, so we're just going to generate some kind of random. C# has a built-in function that will generate a unique ID. So we can track it. But that probably isn't going to persist. It's going to be tied probably to their session. If they come back another time, we're not necessarily going to know who they are. So those are our two scenarios. Okay. So we do have a cart table, and when we generated all of our models, we do have a cart model that we could use for building the shopping cart page, but we're going to make our own model that's a little more customized, so it'll make it easier for us to build the shopping cart page that we need. So we're really not going to touch this one. We'll use it for saving items to the database, but we're going to make a shopping cart model that might make this a little easier for us. So let's go ahead and start planning out that model. So in Visual Studio, if you want to right-click your models folder, we're going to choose Add, and we're going to add a new item to the models folder. And under C#, if we just pick code, we just get a class. So this is just a basic, simple class that we will call shopping cart. Now, all of our other models, because we generated them from the Entity Framework Wizard, right? If we look, they've got a few references here. First thing we're going to do is our database connection. Oops, music store models. Oops. Sorry. Private music. Sorry, I'm using the wrong thing. Let's do that again. We'll use our existing database connection. We're going to create a public property here called shopping cart ID. So this will either be the username if the user's logged in, or it will be some randomly generated unique ID if they're anonymous. One or the other. Now we need to write a few methods for adding items to the cart as well as displaying the items in the cart. We'll deal with remove an item from cart next week. We won't have time to do it today. That's okay. We're going to create a method that returns a shopping cart object. And we'll call it getCart. Our shopping cart page is going to call this method when it loads so the user can see the current items in the cart. And it will return this shopping cart object that we're building. Now, in order to do this, we need one piece of information. If we want to get the cart, what information do we need to pass into this method? Right? We may have millions of people shopping all at once. How are we going to know which cart to show? If we're all shopping on this site at one time, what distinguishes my cart from Ryan's, from Tatiana's, from Yuta's? Yeah, we need to know who the user is, right? Because the cart is tied to the individual user. Now this file, it's not a controller, it's just a basic C# class, so it has no knowledge of the web or sessions or anything else. So what we need to provide is this object that includes that information. That object is called the HTTP context base. We'll explain what that is in a minute. If we don't provide the HTTP context, this method has no way of identifying the user. So just to give you an idea of what this includes, I put the link to this up on Blackboard. We can take a quick second look at it. Just go back to my week. Our folder for this week. So this class, let's look at what it includes. So if there's any information in cache, that would get included. Any errors that happen, we have access to. The request, response, and server object, any session variables, and the one we're interested in is information about the user. So if we don't pass this information to this method, we have no way of knowing what shopping cart we're supposed to get. Is it mine? Is it Haywan's? Is it Ryan's? Is it someone else's? So we need to include this information. So include base to access the current user info, including that parameter. So now we need to get the ID. Is it the user's who's logged in email, or is it just a random ID? So let's see, we want to do this. So what we want to do is check the session and see, do we already have a current shopping cart ID? So we're checking the session for a variable called cart ID. We're checking if we have one. Again, I'm going to show you why the context is important. Notice when I mouse over session, it recognizes what session is. if I don't include this context, now it says session doesn't exist. I don't know what session is. It's only understands session as part of that context. So
we're using session and the database?
well, here's what we're doing. We use the session. So we're saying if it equals null. So that means there's no existing cart right now, right? So the user comes to the site, they've clicked on the cart link, this scenario would run. So right now, cart ID in the session is going to be null. So in effect, now we're going to generate, if we have no current cart ID, we want to generate one. But now we need to know, is the user logged in or are they anonymous? Okay, so if we have no current cart in the session, check if user is logged in. That's going to be our next step. So Alex, first we're working with the session and then with the database. Once we have an item to put in the cart, then it goes to the database. First, we're just trying to see, do we have a current cart, yes or no? And if not, the next step is, do we know who the user is, yes or no? Okay. So we can use this method so if the user.identity.name is not empty, then we're going to attach their username to our cart ID. We're going to take their, create a session variable. So if DJ happens to be logged in, his email is now used as the cart ID, if we can identify who he is. So this is the scenario that our user is logged in. We know who they are. Otherwise, we need to generate some kind of string like this that's going to be unique. And we need to make sure that it's unique because we don't want two people sharing the same cart. Imagine the results of that. So user is anonymous, generate unique cart ID. So C# has a class called GUID. Anybody know, heard that term before? GUID, what does it mean? What do you think the GU stand for? Good guess. Oh, here, Visual Studio told you. A globally unique identifier. So it will be some unique string. So we'll create, all we have to do to generate one of these is call GUID.newGUID. So it will produce some unique string of characters. So if we have 1 million people shopping on the site and they're all anonymous, everyone is going to automatically get a unique ID. So we won't confuse any two users' shopping carts. And now we want to take this new value and stick that into our session variable. So as that person is shopping, we can attach all of their items to one cart. So there's 3 potential scenarios when the user tries to load the cart page. The first one is there's nothing in the cart, so we're going to create a new one with their username. The second scenario is there's no existing cart, but they're anonymous. So we're creating a new cart with some unique identifier. If this value isn't null, it means, well, they've already created a cart, so we don't have to do anything. We're just going to keep on using the current cart ID in the session. So now we'll set this shopping cart ID equal to our session. And then we'll send back our cart object. So this method will run every time the user either clicks the cart link we're going to put in the header, or they click add to cart. We'll add the item to the cart, and then we'll take them off to the shopping cart page, which will immediately run this method and return the current shopping cart for that user. So that's our get cart. We now need an add to cart method. We want on this page somebody to be able to click add to cart. So we need a function that will process adding that item into their shopping cart. So there's our first method. We'll write a public method. So our get method returned the shopping cart object. Our add to cart method is void. It doesn't return anything. So if we're going to add something to the cart, this method also takes one parameter. What piece of information would we need in order to add to cart? Daniel? Yeah, it could be the ID, or it could even be the whole object. It could be the product object itself. By adding the whole album, we don't have to go and then look up all of the information about it. So we're adding an album to our shopping cart. Yep.
This is still the model, right?
Yes.
So are we supposed to be clicking functions in the model, or is it a controller job? Or is it like the model is just the where all of it lives, but controller just executes it?
In this case, yes. I mean, we could do a lot of this in the controller, but I want to create a model because we need a shopping cart page, and there is no exact model that maps exactly to what we need to display on the shopping cart page. So we're also going to create another kind of object in a bit, which I've mapped out here, which is called a view model. So this is when what we need to display to the user isn't exactly represented by any one model. We might need to combine pieces from different models in order to generate the view that we need. So our shopping cart page is going to use this pattern, and it will work with the shopping cart model we're creating. So this is where we want to take the album the user picked, and we want to create a new record in our cart database, in our cart table in the database. So, actually, you know what, Daniel? I think you're right. I think the product ID is probably easier. We could just pass in the product ID instead. It's probably simpler. Yeah, because all we really need, right? We want to insert into this table. We don't need all the information about the album. We just need the ID. That's really the only thing we need there. So we could keep it simpler. Just say so in our cart, right, whatever ID gets passed in, we're going to set the album ID. So the cart comes from our shopping cart ID. So either the user's name or the GUID, whatever identifier. For now, we'll just make it so that you can only add one at a time. And then we want to get a date and time stamp. C# has a simple function for that. DateTime.now will give you the current date and time. So this is creating a new cart object. So now we're going to save to the database. We're creating we're going to add this to the list of carts. And to actually save to the database, to run an SQL insert, we call the save changes method on our database. Now, we haven't written this line before, but we've actually been using it all semester. And I'll show you this in a minute. So when these two lines run, that album should get added to the cart table in SQL Server. So it looks like this stuff is new, but it actually isn't. I'm going to open up one of our other controllers. So here's our store manager controller where we could add, edit, delete albums. Let's look at some of these methods. If I look at my delete method, notice what it does. So this is what the scaffolding runs. We didn't type this code. Scaffold did it for us. We get an ID. We find that album. We call albums.remove and save changes. If we look at our edit method, when we post on our scaffold, it changes the current object to modified. And we see save changes again. And when we create, we're adding the new object and we call save changes. So we've never actually written this code ourselves because we've let the scaffolding do it for us so far. In our shopping cart, we're not using scaffolding. We have to write the code ourselves because it's kind of customized. So that will actually save our changes to the database. So we can actually try our add to cart out. We can add a link, and then we're going to need a controller method in between our link on our view and our add to cart method here. And once we run that, we can go back and do a query on our database. So right now in my cart table, we shouldn't have anything. Right, if I query what's in the cart table, nothing here so far. But once we can run our add to cart method, we should be able to click a button and have those items show up. And we want to try it both logged in and anonymous. And we can see the different cart IDs that get generated. So let's go to our view and add. We want to add to this page, we want to add to cart links in our loop. So this is store browse. So we need to open up that view that we built many weeks ago. We'll go to views and store. We just have index and browse. So index lists the genres and browse lists the albums. So it's pretty simple. There wasn't a lot of code on here. It was just a simple loop to build the table. So we've got 3 column headings right now: title, artist, and price. So we're going to create links. So I'm going to use the Razor syntax that says add to cart. That'll be the title of our link. That'll be the text that's on there. It's next asking for an action name. We haven't written the controller yet. We're going to need to do that next. But the action we want will also be called add to cart. And this is going to go in a shopping cart controller, which we'll have to build next. We'll just start it like this. We're going to have to add a couple things on here. But let's just see how it looks first. So if we just save and go back to your store link, click on any genre, it will load the browse, and there should be a series of add to cart links in your list of albums, hopefully. Just refresh. We should get a 4th column here with a bunch of links that say add to cart. Oh, okay. I also should probably build my solution. So this is what it will look like. Now notice if I click one of these, we have a couple issues. Right? It's looking for that path. It's trying to call an add to cart method in the shopping cart controller. We haven't built that yet, so this result is expected. There's also one more thing we need to do with these links. Everything we've done so far is correct, but we're missing something. What are we missing? Yeah, we need to know what album. Right now, they all just go to the same place. But we haven't told the add to cart method what album it is we want to add. So we're going to have to, on to the end of the link, we need to pass in. And lastly, we need comma null for the HTML attributes. And I should just check, because this parameter has to match exactly what we're sending in. So we called it, yes, capital I, lowercase d. So each of our links is passing an ID value equal to the current album ID. But now we know which add to cart link they clicked on. Is it ID 400, 500, 600? So we can just double check that. If we refresh, so now you can see in the status bar at the bottom left, as I mouse over, the IDs are being appended on to the end of my URL, which is good. Right? That's what we want. We just now have to write a shopping cart controller with an add to cart function that will take that ID, call our add to cart method in our model, which should save that album to our cart in a SQL server. File, shopping cart controller, and we'll need to write an add to cart method in there. We'll also need an index method and an index view. That will be the page that displays the current shopping cart that Danny, you mentioned earlier, right? That's what should happen. After they add, they should see what's in the cart. So we'll get the add to cart working. We'll check and make sure it's being saved to the database, but we're still going to see a 404 error, probably. We'll have to build that shopping cart page. That'll be the last thing we do. So it's 10 to 4. Why don't we take a pause here? I'll push again to GitHub. We'll come back at 4. We'll write our shopping cart controller and our add to cart method, and then we should be able, should work. When we make that call, we can look in our cart table, run a query, and we should start to see things. And we're going to try it both anonymous and authenticated. We should get different cart IDs. Okay, so let's take a break here.